Hello everyone. So today I'm here with a review and a comparison of the Soundcore Liberty 3 Pro earbuds and the Edifier Neobud Pro earbuds. Now, these are both highly acclaimed earbuds. I've actually recently done a comparative review of the Liberty Pro 3s. I compared them to the Bose Quiet Comfort. I compared them to a few other earbuds as well. And these guys are pretty good, but these Neobuds, these Edifiers that have recently come out, they've got some pretty good acclaim to them as well. So I wanted to see how the two compared and frankly, which one would be better for me. Now for me, I always look at a few categories. I'm looking at fit and comfort, ANC, sound quality. But in the case of the Liberty Pro 3s and the Neobuds, I've actually added a few more categories that I'm going to go into because it's actually pretty important, and you'll see why in just a second. So let's first start with cost. On any given day, the Liberty Pro 3s are going to be $169. Let me bring this guy out. Very lovely design. I got the black one here. I had the gray one previously and I returned them for the black one. I just found them to be a little bit sleeker, so I like them a little bit better. Full touch screen, which is great. Full touch screen. Full touchpad, which is great. I got these on sale, $129 for Black Friday. On the other hand, you have your Edifier Neobuds. On any given day, they're $129. They have a fairly classical stem-shaped design with a little bit more character than perhaps your AirPods Pro. So they look quite nice. They also have touch capacity as well. I got these on Black Friday for $103. So for me, I've got the Liberty Pro 3s at $129. I have the Edifier Neobuds Pro at $103, 20-something dollars difference. But again, on any typical given day, the Liberty Pro 3s are about $40 more than the Neobuds. Okay, is that a huge differential? It might not be, dependent upon what you're about to hear. Case. Again, this is something I typically don't talk about because I really don't care that much about the case. In this regard, both cases are almost the same size. They're both fairly pocketable, but there is a difference. The Liberty Pro 3 has wireless charging. The Edifier Neobuds Pro do not. So if that's important to you, then that's something to consider. Both of them have USB-C, but again, Liberty Pro 3 has wireless. This guy does not have wireless. In terms of the fit, this gets interesting because there's a difference between fit and comfort. In terms of pure fit, the Liberty Pro 3 is better, at least to me, in my ears. And again, in this category, mileage is really going to vary because everybody's ear is a little bit different. But the Liberty Pro 3s come with wingtip, and they're interchangeable, so you have a variety of different sizes going from nothing to full, and full can be really big. I have the medium-sized ear wings on this guy, but then also it goes fairly deep into your ear. So because of the wing and because of the depth, this guy is going to give you a tighter fit. It's a catch-22, almost a double-edged sword though. Because you've got a tighter fit, it's not going to be as comfortable as the Edifier Neobuds. These guys, again, have that stem design. They just fit right into your ear, and it's pretty comfortable. I can wear this for a really long period of time before it gets irritating. This guy, on the other hand, is going to get irritating a little bit quicker. It's not to say I don't get used to it, because I do. And I will say also that riding bike, going on a bike ride, I'm wearing this guy, and I'm not going to be wearing the Edifier Neobud Pro. Can they both be used for working out with that in mind? And the answer is yes. This guy is IPX4. I believe this one has a bit of a higher rating, so they can both be used for working out just fine. It's just the security of the Liberty Pro 3 is better. But again, the comfort to me of the Neobuds is more comfortable. And I've got to be honest, that gives me pause. It's like, okay, what do I after? Am I after comfort, or am I after the fit and the security? Of course, it's going to depend upon use factor. If you find yourself in a gym using this, the Neobuds is probably going to be fine. If you find yourself running or on a bike, I would probably stick with the Liberty Pro 3s just because of that security. Okay, that segues into ANC. Both have ANC, and they both do an admirable job. If you take a look at the Edifier Neobud Pro website, it tells you that the noise cancellation on this thing goes to 42 decibels. That's really, really good. We're talking about Sony and Bose territory. It doesn't say that for the Liberty Pro 3, and there's been mixed reviews on this. Some people say, as in terms of reviews, that these guys have better ANC. Some say these guys have better ANC. You know what it boils down to? That fit in your ear. For me and my testing, this Neobud Edifier had good ANC, but it wasn't as good as the Liberty Pro 3. I don't think it's related to the algorithm in this case. I think because this one has a deeper, tighter seal, it made for better ANC than what the Edifier Neobud Pro had. So if you're comparing these two on ANC alone, I would actually give the slight win to the Liberty Pro 3. They're both decent. They're not Sony. They are not Bose. And anybody who says so, I'm not sure what they're listening to, because just in terms of testing, everyday real testing, and I'm not talking about sticking these things on one of those machines, right? Because the machines get you the perfect stuff. But when you stick it in your own ear and you get the own seal, what's going to happen? And for me, I use the biggest ear tips possible to really get that seal as tight as I can. The Liberty Pro 3 turned out to be a little bit ahead. Now, with that said, ANC is a big deal, and people are making a big deal about ANC, rightfully so. But the truth is, when you stick something in your ear and you turn the music on, the likelihood that you hear anything outside is pretty slim to none. So oftentimes ANC is good for conditions where the outside world is really loud. But in an everyday situation, even going to the gym where you do hear some clinking and clinking, I think the music itself is probably going to be loud enough to drown out the outside world, ANC or not. So with that in mind, both of these are going to do an admirable job. Okay, so we've got fit comfort, we've got ANC, now of course the big boy is sound. How did I find the sound? Let me first start off by saying both of these devices are dual driver. And that's not something you see particularly often, especially at this price point. They both do an admirable job. Both of them, in terms of bass, is really good. But the bass itself is not super tight. So if you've got a bass heavy song, it might bleed a little bit. Again, it's not super tight, but with that said, when you put these on, you're going to be blown away, because the fact is you probably haven't heard something like this. These bass heavy earbuds that has this kind of bass. I mean, it has a separate driver for bass, and both of them do a great job. If you're asking me which one is tighter, I would suggest that they're both fairly similar, but the Neobud is a little bit warmer. So the Liberty Pro 3 is brighter. Now, can you fix it? Because this guy is overly bright. And regardless of whether you do the Hear ID test or not, that I'm sure you've all heard about, it's still bright. The answer is yes, you can fix it to a certain extent. You've got a full throttle equalizer, and the cool thing is you've got a bunch of presets, but you can actually go into those presets and you can customize the preset as well. So if you've got a preset that might have deep bass and maybe it's a little bit too deep for you, you can click on that preset, pull down the bass just a little bit, and customize something that's already been put in place for you on the app. In terms of the Edifier Neobud Pro, it doesn't have that kind of flexibility. You do have an equalizer, but the equalizer I believe is a 5-bar equalizer, whereas this guy, I'm sorry, it's like 7 or 8. I mean, it's much, much richer. You've got much more control over this. With that said, this one takes more work than this guy does. I was able to get to a sound profile that I really liked from this one much quicker. This one was a lot of experimentation. It was a lot of music listening, a variety of different genres, and just trying to tweak that equalizer so it brought down the brightness a bit. I don't like sibilance, I don't like harshness. Brought it down. The bass was a little bit too heavy, so I brought that down. And curiously, what worked for me was going to a very high mid equalizer, lower bass, lower treble. So typically these things come in a V shape. I created an N shape, or a little mountain, and that worked remarkably well for me. This brought out a lot of the vocals, a lot of the musicality, and created much more of a balance. Now, is it perfect? No, it's not. And I really want to stress that. There's been so many video reviews of the Liberty Pro 3, and people are saying, oh, this is wonderful, this is the best thing ever. You've got to temper expectation a little bit. This is a great, great earbud, but it's still not perfect sound. I mean, you got to go for a Beoplay EQ, but that thing's like $400. So again, temper expectation a little bit. It's really, really good. I don't think anybody's going to be disappointed, but it's going to take a little bit of work, I think, to get to the sound you want. This guy, again, it takes a little bit of work, but not as much, simply because the equalizer isn't as vast. Although I have to say that in the app, you do have customization of the equalizer. You can change the band frequency. So even though there's only like 5 bands, you can actually fiddle with it, and you can fiddle with the gain. And because of that, this is a little bit more flexible than I think what people are giving it credit for. Okay, so in terms of sound, which one do I prefer? The Liberty Pro 3 has a wider sound stage, and it's louder. Okay, I can put this at 50 to 60%. The equivalent is this one at about 70%. So the Soundcore Liberty Pro 3 is definitely louder, and it has a wider sound stage. But the Edifier Neobuds Pro is warmer. It's not as bright as the Soundcore Liberty 3. So it's a very pleasing and pleasant sound. And for the money and the dual driver, it's pretty impressive. And again, getting this thing for a shade over $100, it's on a different level in terms of sound for anything else in this price point. It's very good. But, and here's the big but. The problem with this, to a certain extent, is onboard control. You can only do double tap, and you can only do triple tap, which means you've got 4 controls. That's it. Now for me, I like to have volume up control, volume down control. I don't want to have a phone in my hand all the time, and I don't want to be compelled to use a smartwatch like an Apple Watch to change volume. I want to be able to do it on the earbuds themselves. Those are 2 things gone, right? And I've got 2 more choices. I like to have pause. If you're talking to someone, you want pause. You can't always take the thing out, and when you take the earbud out, this guy doesn't have automatic stop feature. So if you want to have a pause, you got to have it on the earbud. I got one thing left. What is it? I'd like to have next track. I want to be able to skip a song, especially if I'm doing a full shuffle. But I also want to be able to put the earbud from ANC, which is my typical default, into an ambient mode in case I have to talk to somebody maybe at the gym and I don't want to take the earbud out. I'd just rather go like this. See, this is my problem. And what if I wanted to activate Siri? And that's another thing. I tested both of these on AAC on an iPhone. I'm not using high res. So high res LDAC is going to be a little bit different in terms of sound signature. I can't comment on that. I've only used the iPhone. But I want to use Siri. Maybe I want to ask Siri something while I'm riding a bike. I don't know. I can't do that with these. It's extremely limited. Can they fix it in a firmware update? Maybe, but here's another problem. On the Edifier Neobuds app, you don't have firmware updates, at least not on the iOS side. You do have a firmware update ability on the Android side, and I know a lot of those folks have been able to get LDAP, but you have to get another app called Magic in order to update the firmware on this. So it's not particularly seamless to update the Edifier Neobuds Pro. Now we take a look at the Soundcore Liberty 3. It's full control. Single tap, double tap, triple tap, hold for 2 seconds. So let's go over that again. Single tap, double tap, triple tap, hold for 2 seconds, times 2, right? Because both earbuds have the same thing. I've got 8 elements of control on this guy. I have 4 elements of control on this guy. I can do anything I want. There's a caveat. It's a little bit tricky. Like sometimes it works, other times it doesn't work. You've got to get that tapping down just right. So you've got to be strategic, right, in what you do. You probably don't want to have volume control being a single tap, because if you've got something that's a double tap, like next track, it might just raise the volume for you and not go to double track. So what I did was I put volume control with the hold for 2 seconds. That's worked out extremely well. So the point is, this guy has a lot more control. I love these Edifier Pros. I really do. But the onboard control is a real downer for me. The lack of it is a real downer for me. So much so that even with the extra money, I would rather get these. And so, but it's not just that. You got to round it out. To me, the fit and security was better on the Liberty Pro 3s. This guy's more comfortable, but this guy's got a tighter fit. The ANC was better for me because of that fit. The sound is better. It takes more work, but if you're patient, you can get a lot of good stuff out of this earbud. The sound stage is a bit wider. It's definitely louder. Without a doubt, it's definitely louder. And the onboard controls are much more flexible. You got more things that you can do. And then finally, for those of you that matter, it's a wireless charging. So on a typical day, this being $40 more than this one, in my opinion, it's way worth it. Getting this at $129 and this at $103 to squeeze them in closer, it's worth it. If you don't have that extra 20 bucks though, don't feel bad about getting the Edifier Neobuds Pro. This thing is wonderful. My hope is that the Edifier Neobuds Pro 2, because we all know that that's going to be coming out sooner rather than later, I'm sure, without knowing anything. I just have to think so because the competition is so fierce. My guess is Edifier is probably going to add all of those additional options that the Soundcore Liberty has. They'll probably up the price of this guy a little bit to get closer to this guy. And when that's the case, now what do I do? What do I do? I'd probably lean toward this one at that point because I like the warmer sound signature of this one. It's not as bright and I sort of prefer that. But until then, I'm really happy with this one. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. That is a very quick review and comparison of these two actually very wonderful earbuds. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. I get back to them when I can and if I can. So thanks again. I appreciate it. And I'll provide links to some of the other reviews that I've done in case you're interested. Again, I've talked about the Liberty Pro 3s and I've compared them to the Bose Quiet Comfort. I've compared the Bose Quiet Comfort to the MW08s. I've taken a quick jab at the Earphone Pro 2 for an economical type of earbud that is similar in form factor as the Neobuds, but not as good as the Neobuds. So I'll leave those links below. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Until next time. Bye-bye.